Hello.
Hello.
Oh yeah, I thought you were going to forget to do it because we're not at the space today. Instead, we are at home due to
Yes.
extenuating circumstances that allowed us to not be at the space. We
Yeah.
are instead at home, and so we're doing this podcast just like we normally do it. We're just doing it from home and looking into our computers instead of gazing across a table at each other like we normally do. And so yeah, we're here. There's been a lot going on. Have you heard?
There's been some things, yeah.
Yeah, a couple of
Wait, are
things.
you talking about the local football team, or are you talking about the local hockey team?
The local football team has been a bit of a mess.
Has this not been one of the greatest weeks for the Golden Knights in months?
Yeah, I mean, so like you're basically saying that the Raiders completely fell apart. The coach gets fired, all that. Yeah.
They traded for Eichel as well, so
They trade for Eichel. I mean, they can't win a lot of games right now. Like they just lost at Detroit. That's not great. They're 6-6. They're out of playoff position. Like all of that's not great. But yeah, I mean, the A's are not coming here, it seems like, too. I guess that would be a positive.
I mean, they did split, and I think that's kind of a positive when you go in that first game and you get beat up pretty good by Toronto. I know the competition in the middle. I would argue Detroit's better than the two teams in the middle there, but I mean,
it depends. Like they shouldn't be, but well, maybe Ottawa, but like Montreal should be better. They're just playing like complete garbage right now. Which is, whatever, and good job on the Golden Knights going in and getting that one. But you go back and, like, my problem has been they just don't look good. Like, last night might have been the best they've looked playing in Detroit, and they lose 5-2. And they were all over them in the back end of the game. Like, there was some good moments in that game as a whole. But, like, overall, I feel like we're 12 games in, and what game do you feel like that's the best the Golden Knights can be? Like, do you even have one?
I guess Colorado, but I think that's everybody's answer.
Right. So like, okay, so I guess there's Colorado, and then what's second?
I mean, you can't give the opening night. That's not it.
They blew a 3-goal lead to Anaheim.
The Ducks, you can't say that one. Dallas, they didn't really play well, but they
got
won.
Stopped. Yeah.
I guess maybe Montreal.
Even that one, they gave up 20 shots in the first period. Like that first period could have been 7-0.
Do you think that was some of the bullshit traveling, going through customs, taking tests, all that junk?
Weren't they in Canada?
Well, no, but I'm saying actually, I don't know. Do you have to prove from one province to the other?
I don't know. I try to not care about any of that shit. And like the other thing is like this team got stuck in Colorado until like 3 a.m. and then flew in and played like crap and somehow beat Dallas. So like the whole thing, this whole season, like I don't really know what to make of it. I don't know what to make of how they're playing. I don't know what to make of what's going to happen when Eichel's finally healthy. I don't know what to even make of like as they get guys back. Like I'm assuming it's going to go Stone, Pacioretty, Karlsson in that order. And maybe it's Stone, Pacioretty, Karlsson, Whitecloud in that order. I'm not sure how much of a difference he'll make. I don't know that each individual one coming back is going to change the fortunes immediately. Like you would think with Mark Stone that it would, but there are issues that go well beyond what Mark Stone can do.
Is that the theme of this year, though? Winning ugly?
I guess. I mean,
that's where they need to be by the time all these guys are back.
But are you winning the cup playing that way?
I mean, the only way they win the cup is if Jack Eichel is 100%, at the conference finals, and Mark Stone is scoring, and Max Pacioretty is scoring. That's the only way they win the cup. So
let's just take our guesses here. I know we did like the whole podcast on Eichel, but like now that the dust has settled a little bit, we talked to him today. He seems very nonchalant. I was a little surprised by that. I thought he would be a little bit more amped up and ready to go for being here. It's fine. It's not a big deal to me. Like I'm not going to judge anybody's personality and how that's going to affect their play on the ice. I know what he can be on the ice. I was a little surprised he was that nonchalant, but like now that the dust has settled and kind of we see where they're headed and what's going on and understanding the injuries to Carlson, Pacioretty, and Stone. Obviously understanding his injury, he says 3 months. McCrimmon mentioned 5 months. There's a huge difference between those two. Like, where do you feel like they're headed? Like, do you think it's going to be sell-off this year, or do you think we're headed towards them actually being able to successfully pull off the injury game and going into the postseason $9 million over?
I mean, the only thing with that is, wasn't it brought up in the owners' meeting this in the off season? Wasn't this conversation discussed about what Tampa did? And I mean, I don't know. There's no evidence, and they didn't, like you said, they didn't fix it. But I don't know. I feel like there's got to be a watchdog out there.
I mean, but what is the watchdog going to do? Like, I would agree with you, but Eichel's is the perfect example. There's no way that for a guy who's having a surgery that's never been done before to an NHL player, there's no way anyone's going to be able to say, well, that's illegal. He should be playing right now. You can't have him on LTIR. I don't think that's the route they're going to try and go, just based on hearing Eichel, understanding what he went through, understanding and kind of hearing his talk about where he was and how he feels like he should be able to play now had he had the surgery at the right time. I don't think they're going to try and force him to sit out the rest of the season, but there's no recourse that the NHL can take if they do.
But I think there's recourse with Jack Eichel. I don't think he wants that.
No, I'm almost positive he doesn't.
I mean, I understand that he was traded to a team with their own plans in mind, and they're hoping that he'd be a big piece in the playoffs and hopefully down the stretch. But, I mean, we're talking about a guy who hasn't played in almost a year, right? So Now we're looking at actually what? Not almost a year.
Not quite a year yet.
6-7 months or whatever. Yeah. I mean, he wants to play hockey, right?
You would think.
And I can't imagine them convincing him to stretch out his injury when realistically he needs to get out there to see if that injury is healing.
Well, and I'm also convinced that if they go down that road, it's going to end horribly in the first series or two, just because he's not going to be himself and you're going to be relying on him to be something that he can't be at that moment. And then we talk about how much better Jack Eichel's going to be than Chandler Stevenson, than William Karlsson, than Nick Waugh, than these types of guys. But playing your first game in what would be 13, 14 months at that time, and never having played in a playoff game and never having played in this system and never having played with these line mates, I'm not sure he would be better in a playoff game than some of those guys. And that sounds crazy, but I really don't think so. That brings me to one of, I think, is the kind of the most important topic moving forward here. And that's the incremental difference between a Jack Eichel and a Will Karlsson and a Nick Waugh and a Chandler Stevenson. So right now, Chandler Stevenson, 12 points in 12 games. Does it feel to you like Chandler Stevenson is out there dominating, like he's a point per game player and that this is this guy's a superstar? It doesn't feel it, right?
I mean, I got to be honest. I'm always not shocked when he scores or does, makes a really nice play. It's more or less I guess I didn't expect this much from him already.
Right.
I don't want to count him out because we've seen him perform well, but will that continue throughout the rest of the season and more importantly in the playoffs?
And so my question is I think everyone's on the same bandwagon of a fully healthy Jack Eichel is better than probably every single player on this team, maybe with the exception of Alex Pietrangelo. At his best, different position, different role, different amount of ice time he can get. It's possible Alex Pietrangelo is a better player than him. Alex Pietrangelo has a cup as a captain. Jack Eichel does not. He's never been in a playoff game. Okay, I can make that argument. But Stone, Pacioretty, Karlsson, all of these guys, I think it's clear that he's better. If you say, okay, well, how much better is he? I think just taking the incremental better, if you get fully healthy Jack Eichel, I think there's reason to believe the same team that went into last postseason without Tuck and instead with Dadonov and now with another player in Eichel involved, I think that team in theory should be incrementally better enough to be 5, 6, 7 wins better that they need to win the Cup. But are you getting that immediately? And then B, if you're going to go down a road where I think you're going to get peak Jack Eichel, I think he has to play probably a month, if not a month and a half before the playoffs. You're going to have to subtract players off your roster or have other players sit out for an entire month and a half to when you get to the postseason. And then reasonably, based on where we're at in the standings right now and where we're probably going to be when everybody gets healthy by February, they're probably not winning the division. They're probably not even finishing in second. So you're reasonably playing Calgary or Edmonton on the road to open up your season. The incremental difference between players, while we make a huge deal out of how much Jack Eichel is better than Nick Waugh, is he that much better than Nick Waugh?
At the moment.
No, like even peak Jack Eichel, like I know he's better. I know he makes a difference. But at the same time, like how much better is Mark Stone than Riley Smith? A lot. But come playoff time, and come some of these games, and you can walk out of some of these games saying, I don't know if Riley Smith was worse than Mark Stone. I'm not even sure Alex Tuck or Jonathan Marchessault or anyone was like Nick Waugh's been good recently. I think that we all do this. We overrate the importance of superstars and what they can mean to a team. Like plug him in for absolutely nothing. Yeah, he's better, but take out Alex Tuck, who definitely happened, Krebs, who definitely happened, and then get some of the same things that you've gotten and getting less Theodore. Are they even better in that case? I think it's closer than people think.
Well, I mean, again, there's deficiencies on this team before. When everybody was healthy, we were concerned about this team coming up with big goals, scoring 3 a night. And I mean, I don't think goaltending we've ever questioned, right? We always thought that they would get good goaltending. Yep. And to be fair, Leonard's been hung out to dry at times this year. But, I mean, he's performed well.
It's been awesome.
I'm worried about what you're saying in the sense of there's pressure now, right? You're telling me that, Jack Eichel makes this team better, but also as a team, are they better, right? Well, he's going to feel that. He's going to feel that I have to do this to make this team better and to make sure that I fit with this organization. I mean, and you were talking about he wants to play in 3 months, and that's late February, and the team mentioned 5 months. I mean, they're not on the same page there,
right?
Or at least publicly, right? I mean, we don't know what's being said in behind the closed doors, but we've talked about it. This organization gives whatever those free agents want or whatever those big players want, they kind of give it to them. So I think there's a lot of pressure. If Eichel's healthy by February even, I still think there's pressure on the playoffs on him.
Well, and there's the argument to be made that like maybe the front office is throwing out a 5-month window to kind of keep the potential salary cap issues under wraps. Like if we throw out 5 and we say like it is possible that we can get all the way to the end of the season without having to make any moves, it might make some of these trades that they're inevitably going to have to make a little bit easier. And if they do run into Mark Stone gets hurt again, or Max Pacioretty gets hurt again, or Marchessault and Carlson, or whatever, some combination of $9 million, then they can get all the way to the end without actually having to make some of these moves. I think they're well aware that like every single other general manager in this league, their ears perked up when they heard Vegas completes trade for Eichel in that, they're $9 million over the cap. That means if they want to be healthy, there's going to be some bargain bin prices there to be had. Maybe we can acquire Riley Smith and a 3rd round pick for doing absolutely nothing. And we're a playoff team at the moment. Like there could be an argument to be made that McCrimmon's coming out and saying potentially 5 months because he's thinking about what's going to happen next and how they're going to have to go about this. It would be a good move. And I think that looking at kind of where they're at and what makes you think like we must pull off this deal, which is the Golden Knights did. They felt like they had to pull off the deal. They ended up getting the deal done. They had to believe that this season is the best chance to win the Stanley Cup. Like if we can do what Tampa did last year, we were 5, or what were they, 6 wins away last year, or were they 5, right? No, 6. They lost 4-2. So they were 6 wins away last year. Jack Eichel and Evgeny Dadonov instead of Fleury and Tuck, I think we're in you got to feel like that should be enough. They don't need a huge difference. But what I'm like, and I think you would agree with that, right? Like just adding Jack Eichel, that change, you feel like, okay, if everyone's peaked that themselves, they can get 6 more wins. But if they're not, and if they're in a situation where they do have to make some of these moves, you're fundamentally changing your roster to something that, to me, is blazing a new trail in the NHL. That I don't know of a team that has had this much top-heavy salary that has had success. The only team that really comes to mind is Toronto, and they have not.
And the other thing is, I don't think we can think of a team that's traded away high-end players, top 6 players at the end of the season, and then go into the cup or the playoffs and expect to win the cup. Right. So, and the other thing is, I know you said it's smart by Kelly, by the way. It is smart to extend it to 5 months, but shouldn't they be on the same page with Eichel? So that way he could say 3 to 5 months. I mean, when you hear the players say 3 months, I believe that more always than the organization.
Right. And then you should. And he's the one who has all the information on it. And there is sort of this feeling of like they traded for Jack Eichel and have just thrown their faith at Jack Eichel. Like, we believe that whatever this pedestal you were willing to stand on to say, I'm not letting Buffalo decide what my surgery is going to be. I know better than what their doctors know. I've done all this research. I think the Golden Knights just accepted that and said, we're standing back. Like, you do you. We think what's best, what you think is best for you is going to be best for you. It's a little bit of a risk. I don't think it's a massive risk, but there is that feeling of like, are they putting themselves at the mercy of not only Eichel, but the doctor that he's believing in, who is going to get paid to do his surgery?
And, again, it's tough to say because you obviously think that the organization would do their due diligence and find out exactly what this surgery is and how it can help. I mean, think about it. What was it? Chris Weidman, UFC, what do you call them? UFC players? What are they?
Fighters.
There we go. So, I don't know. I mean, if it works in fighting, right, which is a very physical sport.
But it really didn't. He came back, he fought again, but this was a guy who was at the peak, was coming down off that peak, got injured, had this surgery, was able to fight again, but he's not been the elite superstar that he was before. Aljamain Sterling's another one who he's not the elite superstar that he was before. I don't know. That's such a different sport. To me, comparing UFC to hockey, it's almost useless.
Right. And that's the other thing. How do we know how they were injured? What happened to those fighters? I would assume that it had something to do with while they were fighting or something. But for the most part, why would...
You all right in there? I don't know what's going on.
I got my little kid trying to come in. But for the most part, I would just think that if the surgery goes well, right?
Which it should.
Why rush him back? Who cares? In a way, don't put so much pressure on this season. Put all the pressure on next season. I mean, let them develop a roster that can win the cup and not throw away a high-end player at the end of the year.
I'm with you, but at the same time, I continue to just think to myself, if you go for it next year, I guess just fundamentally, do you view the way that the roster is going to look in the future, which is basically just you? All I'm saying is Eichel, Stone, Pietrangelo, Leonard, just those guys. And then you can throw in, if you want to add in Pacioretty, Marchessault, Carlson, Martinez, if you want to play that game. Either way, a good majority of their salary will be at the top. There will be a middle class that is shrinking for sure. and then a lower class that is basically all replacement level players at $750,000 or $800 or whatever it'll be come time. Like, do you view that as a new roster construction towards winning the Stanley Cup, or do you view that as like, no, other teams have done this, I think that can actually work?
See, I always worry about the copycat situation because remember 2 years ago when they hired DeBoer, you and I discussed it. Was St. Louis part of their influence there? 100%. They didn't win the cup, right? They didn't win the cup. If they try to go down this road, what if the NHL does catch on to something? Let's say the Golden Knights plan is to run out the injuries and then get a full deck game one of the postseason. What if the NHL is onto something? What if it disrupts their plan?
It could. This year, I think, like, in the event that things go south this year, whether that's before Eichel's ready or they go all the way in and Eichel doesn't quite do it, I think it's their best chance. They may think it's their best chance. If it doesn't happen this year, you still have them for 4 more. You still have Stone for a bunch. You still have Pietrangelo for a bunch. I don't think it's the end of the world. What I'm kind of concerned with is I don't know that this is a copycat of a successful formula. Like, I think to the teams that have won in the past, and like, yes, if you can copy Tampa's LTIR strategy, maybe that can work. I also think you have to remember what Tampa went through to get to where they got to. They were the reigning Stanley Cup champions. They had a bunch of young, homegrown talent in their roster that was playing up to it, and they were pretty darn healthy going through the postseason until the cross-check on Kucherov when he got hit there. And when you really look back, like, they kind of got handed a gift playing not a very competitive team in the final both years.
Yeah.
Dallas and Montreal. So, like, in a way, I like the new path. Like, in a way, I think, like, okay, don't play the copycat game, because usually the copycat game just leads to someone else playing a new game that wins. But this setup, it just screams Toronto to me. And I just don't understand how something that screams Toronto Maple Leafs makes you believe we're going to do it so much better than them that we're going to be able to win 13 extra playoff games when they might actually have more talent.
Well, that's what scares me. You're talking about the lower middle class on the team. They're not really effective. That bottom six is not the most effective bottom six. And when you head into the playoffs with guys like that, if Stone and Pacioretty and Eichel aren't scoring or doing their part, how are you going to rely on that bottom six if it's less talent, if it costs less? I worry that other teams' bottom six that are top heavy are better, like you were just saying about Tampa.
Like, okay, let's take the Vegas top six for next year. I think this year, like, are we both on the same page? Like, if everyone comes back, if they play the LTIR game, if it goes down the path that they literally get to the postseason with every single player on this current roster healthy and playing to their peak, they're probably the favorites to win the Stanley Cup, and something will have to have gone wrong for them to not win the Stanley Cup, right?
I mean, they'd probably be neck and neck with maybe Edmonton at that point, right?
I think they'd be better than them. I think maybe more Carolina, Florida, Tampa again.
But, okay, let's just say the West, right? Because clearly
the West, they should win. They've
had trouble getting out of the West, right? Or the semifinals, whatever.
They have.
So, I mean, I'd like to say Edmonton's a real contender this year. They've looked it. We all know what happens in the postseason. But they're a top-heavy team, right? I mean, so aren't they proof that right now, top-heavy team, and you said Toronto, aren't they proof that those teams aren't winning?
Yeah, well, and you're right, though, that it's like, well, if suddenly the top-heavy Golden Knights are going to break through, what's to think that the same thing might not happen for Toronto or might happen for Edmonton? I think, to me, right now, though, if they play the game where they get all the way to the end with all the LTIR, they're not top-heavy because their fourth line will be very usable players. It would be like Patrick, Janmark, and Waugh. Like, that's fine. Like, that's the third line would be like Stevenson, Dodonov, and I don't know who I'm all over the place right now, but like they wouldn't be that short of talent at all. There would be really no hole. The biggest question mark would be Eichel's never played in a postseason game. Stone has gone cold at different times in the postseason, and Leonard has never really been the guy on the run. But I think that this season, you have to say, like, okay, this would be a remarkable situation to get everyone playing at their peak on the same level, on the same team, when they've never played together before. Like, it kind of reminds me in a way like the World Cup or the Olympics from all the times back. Like, how many times have you gone into those things looking at the Canadian roster and saying there's no team that's ever going to come within 4 of them?
Yeah, right. I mean,
and then you watch the games and what happens?
Yeah, you see that Russia has a good team. You see that the Czech has a good team. Finland, Sweden, all these teams all of a sudden might be catching up.
Well, even if they're not, like the talent on the list looks so crazy better for Canada, but then they play a emotionally charged game against America, or they play an emotionally charged game against Russia, and it's close. And at times, that Canadian team didn't come together and it didn't work. At times it did work. At times the American team came. I guess my point is you want a full season to feel like all these guys can come together and we are playing at our peak. I think we felt that in year 1. We felt that in year 2. We certainly felt that last year at different times. It was like, man, they're playing elite hockey throughout most of this season. We know what works. We know what doesn't work with this team. I don't think you're going to have those answers. I think it would be remarkable if they get it done this season. But there's also a piece of you that has to look at it and say, well, the talent on their roster is better than everybody else's. It shouldn't be a crazy surprise if they get it done this season, $9 million over the cap, and adding Jack Eichel to the team who's been to the Western Conference Final back-to-back seasons. I don't think that's crazy. But where I do think it's interesting is like, when you get to the point where you are top heavy, because they will inevitably be top heavy when they finally get underneath the cap, whether that's this postseason or next postseason or next season or whatever, they will inevitably get there. Are we blazing a path that can be successful, or are they just setting themselves up to look differently in the playoffs, lose a different way in the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly the point right there. I mean, think about it. If they go in, all the talent of the world, they're all healthy. Does talent just immediately mix because talent works out? I don't know that, right? We've seen it before where talent comes in. Mark Stone, he comes in, right? And you said it, you brought it up last time. It took him a few games to get used, maybe even a week, right?
Yep.
I'm worried about that week.
You don't have a week.
That's the playoffs. I'm worried about that week.
You don't have a week, and you're probably playing a decent team. You don't get Minnesota in the first round this year. You don't get Chicago in the first round, Vancouver. You're getting a team that's probably going to have 100 points and is playing well.
And then not to mention, and again, we have no idea how the healing process comes, but in an intense playoff game, how will Jack hold up? I mean, and again, both of us have confidence that he'll be back healthy, maybe not this year, but definitely by the start of next year. There's so much pressure on him, but not to mention him, so much pressure on Stone and Pacioretty because of what they haven't done in the past. The only person that I think the Golden Knights can rely on, 2 people, is Pietrangelo right now, mm-hmm. and Leonard. I think they can expect they'll get half decent goaltending. I know sometimes he gives up 4, but I don't necessarily blame him for all that. And he'll have a better, healthier team around him by the postseason.
Well, Fleury did too. I mean, there were times where Fleury would give up 4, and there were times where Fleury would give up 0, and Leonard's been doing the same thing. Like, I think the only fear, and it's not really a fear, it's just there's an unknown to Leonard that it's like, well, we've seen Fleury go on these postseason runs. We really haven't with Leonard. Like, I guess for the most part, he kind of went on that 3rd season bubble run, but even that, we didn't really feel that great about that run at all. Like, they beat a terrible Chicago team. They got pushed to the limit to Vancouver, and then they didn't play well against Dallas. That run, like, while it is a conference final run, I just don't think it's the same. the other thing that like I can't get out of my mind, and I'm not really sure what to make of it, because there's a part of me that wants to like write a book about what's happened here and how insane it is, and how like if this results in a Stanley Cup, it is like the craziest shit ever. But there's also another part of me that sits here and says like, why was something so obvious on the ice, which was that first team going to the Cup final and coming together and playing the way they did and playing above the names on the paper, right? Like I think they were clearly above the names on the paper the whole way. Like when that happened, how do you then look at that and 4 years later say, you know what? That strategy was 100% wrong. We need to go a completely opposite direction. Like every single thing they've done has been the opposite direction. They've gotten less fun, more businesslike, more like X's and O's based, less read, react, just play the game, more of a tactical coach as opposed to a player's coach, way more superstars, way less depth, way slower. Like I don't think Jack Eichel makes them faster.
I mean, he's not going to make Stone and Pacioretty faster.
Like, what do you think happened, or when did it happen, or why did it happen? How did they end that season losing in Game 5 of the Stanley Cup and then getting to the point where the next playoff game they play, it'll probably be the Golden Knights led by Jack Eichel, Mark Stone, Max Pacioretty, and Robin Lehner and Alex Pietrangelo, and none of those names were there. Like, what made them believe, let's blaze a new path, let's go this crazy different direction? Like, where did that come from?
Game 7 overtime with the Sharks?
I mean, I guess Stone was on that roster, Pacioretty was on that roster. So what do you mean by that?
Meaning that the organization, after that loss, they just had no confidence in the direction of that roster. So that original roster and whoever held over, I don't think they had faith in that team, that roster to win the Cup. And then the other thing is, I think we're learning that Bill Foley loves stars. Yeah. I think he's just a guy that loves stars on his team. And in a way, maybe it's not the best business, but in his opinion, stars win cups. I would agree to a point, but St. Louis is a great example of a team won a cup.
See, I don't think I do agree, just because I feel like every single postseason we do the same thing. We're like, oh my God, Ross Colton. You know, oh my God, these bums on the third line in St. Louis, and I feel like we've done that here. Like it's always been about the X factor, Alex Tuck. It's been about what can they get down their lineup? Where can they get some contributions so that when Philippe Deneau takes away Mark Stone, how can you react behind that? Like, it feels to me like it's always been about depth, and that if this thing gets done, and I feel the same way about Toronto, I feel the same way about Edmonton. If Toronto or Edmonton win the Stanley Cup, we're going to inevitably come out of it saying, oh my God, McDavid was fucking unbelievable. This is unreal. All of a sudden, they got 26 goals each from Marner and Matthews. Like, I feel like that's the way we're headed. And the same thing, I think, would be said about Vegas. Like, no, it's not about Nick Waugh and Evgeny Dadonov. No, it's because Jack Eichel was a 1.5 game per player for 2 months, and Stone was, and Pacioretty was, and all these superstars came through at the right time. You're blazing a new path. But what I cannot figure out, and what I cannot wrap my head around, is the best team they've ever had, without question, the team that went to the Cup final, that was as consistent as any team that's ever, like, basically other than that Tampa team, that Golden Knights team, they lost 3 games in a row, never lost a fourth, barely ever lost in the playoffs. Like, that was a pretty easy run, 4-0 against LA. Yeah, it got a little close, but they also got screwed in an overtime game against San Jose. They should have won that series 4-1, and then they won against Winnipeg 4-1. Like, they were basically 12-2 all the way to the Cup final. Like, that team was built on speed, the rush, depth, and highlight flashy goaltending and simplicity in their own end. They weren't trying to create chances out of their own end. It was just move it and get it out. Like move it out, move it out, move it out. Like now they're such a different team and they're such a different style. Why did they feel like that team was so unable to get this done? And maybe it is Foley. Maybe all of this does go on Foley, in which case he deserves a ton of the credit if this does work.
I mean, again, they lost to Ovechkin. They lost to Carlson. They lost to Orlov, Oshie, all these stars, right? Well, semi-stars. Ovechkin is clearly a star.
Kuznetsov. Yeah.
Backstrom. So, did he look at that roster and say, I need these stars to win a cup? And did he go and tell his guys in that offseason, say, yeah, you did a great job, but I need stars to win the cup?
But don't you have to look at they beat Doughty and Kopitar and Carter and Brown, and then they beat Burns and Couture and Thornton and Marlowe. Was Marlowe on that team? I think he was.
Yeah.
And then they beat Scheifele and Wheeler and Bufflin. There were good players in that. And in all of it, we went into every single one saying they're the less talented team, but they'll win because of the way they play. I'm just I think to me, it's such a radical change that it just seems, I don't know if erratic's the right word or what it is. It just seems like it literally makes me think I need to write a book about this. When did these changes happen? When did you decide need an elite defenseman, need an elite center, need an elite two-way stud in Mark Stone, need the sniper in Pacioretty, need to keep this guy, need to switch our goalie? When did each of these happen?
Now, the other thing is, the question is, do they have a different definition of depth than you and I? Because you're talking about all the depth on those two first teams. There's nowhere close to that they've seen over the past 2 years. And I know that Kelly came out and said this year that it's the deepest team they ever had. I think you would probably want to take that back, because I don't think at this point you can actually own that.
That's kind of where I'm coming into marginal upgrades that we like to play names on paper upgrade. We like to play, Dadonov versus who was third line right wing in the playoffs last year, Kolazar, Carrier.
Yeah.
So, and you look at that and you're like, okay, well, he makes more money. He has a history of scoring more goals. He's going to be better. But the marginal difference, it's literally 0.05 goals per game, 0.01. Over an 82-game season, you're getting 6 better. And even that's probably a lot.
And at that point, a marginal raise in talent, is it worth $5 million?
And then you're also constantly churning. One of the things that I do think we have seen, and again, I think St. Louis is the tough one that if you're chasing what St. Louis did, maybe we have a completely different conversation. But Tampa, they were together. Their core was together for a long time. If you look at the actual core of the Golden Knights now, the main core of the Golden Knights is Eichel, Stone, and Leonard. And maybe you throw Pietrangelo in there, but that's not the core that had the pain of losing in the Stanley Cup final. It's not the core that had the pain of not a major above my shoulder. That's not the core even that had the pain in the bubble. It's different. Tampa, their core went through Columbus.
And they grew up together. Like you said, they played together. The only, we look around, it's the misfit line, McNabb, guys like that who have been there, Shea, since day one. But they're, like you just mentioned, they're not the core anymore.
The roles are lessened. They're not the guys, and they're not steering the ship anymore. You know what I mean? They were the guys. They were they're not growing up together. They've just watched a completely new ship be built around them. And that ship is fancier and has cool windows and all this crap. But it's not the same. Washington grew up together, went through the pain together. Yes, there were some changes, but the main core of that team stayed the same. The guys that won, I remember we were in Washington. Do you remember their video before the Cup final game?
No, remind me.
So it was like, because remember the Golden Knights had the over-the-top like thing on the ice and, you know, the lantern and all the good shit. Like I'm still was waiting for them to like shoot a bald eagle in the face or something, and they never did that. But that's what Vegas was. We went to Washington. It was way tamer, obviously. They don't have the sound system. They don't have all of it. But like they had this video where it was like pictures and videos of like Alex Ovechkin and Kuznetsov and John Carlson and all these guys and Holtby was a good one, where they were all like 5 years old, 6 years old, and they had these videos of them as kids, like on roller skates and whatever. And then they would show them like as kids getting drafted and being together. And then last year, and then some like the devastating moments that they went through. And then they, you know, now we're here. Now we're in the Cup final. And if we win a couple games, we've done it. You know, Pittsburgh, they all basically got drafted together. Chicago, they all basically got drafted together. LA, they all basically got drafted together. And some of these other teams that were put together differently have not gotten there. Like Nashville is one where they went out and they bought a number of different stars. Like, yeah, they had some guys that they had together. San Jose, they went out and bought a couple of different stars, and that didn't really work. And now I wonder, like, what is the story arc of the team that is supposed to win this Stanley Cup? Is it similar to my Buccaneer team where like the pictures that you show are like Brady signing his contract and Brady picking up the phone and calling Rob Gronkowski and then them calling Antonio Brown? Like it's all off ice stuff, off field stuff. Like, is that the story? It's like the story of the Golden Knights now is, well, Alex Pietrangelo decided to sign this contract, and then Jack Eichel needed to have neck surgery and things came, you know, worked out that way. And Mark Stone didn't want to stay in Ottawa. Like, is it all off ice stuff? Like, is it a story we've ever heard in the NHL, I guess?
I mean, now that you put it that way, in a way, yeah. I mean, how many times have you heard teams chopping up the way that they have and then have the same expectations the next year? I mean, even if he's healthy or not, by the time game one rolls around, they still expect to win the cup.
For sure.
Even if they have to move elements to get underneath the cap by game one,
they're going to think they can win.
The expectations are still there. So, I mean, is a free agency game. It's the New York Yankees, right? But you look back and the Yankees had a core. They had a built-in core. The Golden Knights' built-in core is the guys you just mentioned. Off-ice stuff, so they come to Vegas. You know, as decisions, they want to be here in Vegas. This team is willing to pay them or trade for them. I just think there's so many difficult elements to this season that I would relieve the pressure. If I was the ownership and organization, I would tell these guys, listen, I know you can't do it, but like,
you can't.
But if you want to get real with this team and you really think that they can win the cup in the next few years, why pressure this year? Why force them to be in a situation where maybe Eichel's working harder than he should? You know what I mean? I don't know. I know I'm throwing out, you know, just situations here, scenarios, but I think that there's so much pressure, no matter what happens going into this postseason, that I don't believe that it can happen.
Okay, let me ask you this, because I'm a big storyline guy. I like the story arc of champions. I think it's cool that sometimes, you know, the video that comes out of how the team won, it's always fun. You know, I think Tampa's, obviously they had Columbus. St. Louis they were in dead last and they changed their coach. And I think Vegas tried that strategy a little bit. Washington had their run, you know, the core of what Pittsburgh was, LA, Chicago. Is the story better if they win this year, or is it better if they win next year?
Well, I mean, in hockey history, this year would be bigger, right?
Right.
I mean, when you're looking through, if you're opening the book of Stanley Cups and then you get to 2021 and you read it, you're like, holy shit, how'd they pull this out?
Right.
But in a more natural way, if they won it next year, I think it would feel more. I think it would feel more I don't want to say not like genuine, but like organic, right?
I almost feel like that has to be 2 years from now. Like, am I making something up that like you have to have failure to win a Stanley Cup? Like,
but they've had failure.
But they won't have had failure with Jack Eichel and Alex Pietrangelo and Mark Stone. They will have had failure with Mark Stone, and then with Mark Stone and Alex Pietrangelo and Fleury, and then with Alex Pietrangelo and Mark Stone and Leonard, and then with, it feels like you need to have that. Maybe that does happen this season. I don't know. I'm trying to think of history. Like, I think we might be on a path where like this is historic in that no one's ever done something like this in a way that it kind of reminds me sort of like a cross between the expansion team where like no one ever thought they could do it. And like that story was movie worthy. I'm in the fucking movie.
Right.
Or Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Like, you buy all your players, you create your dream team. And then the guys that have been there for a while finally get what they deserve. But mainly, like, I can't get the picture out of my head. Like, Mike Evans walks over to Tom Brady and says, thank you. Thank you for getting me this Super Bowl. It's like, well, wait a minute, Mike, you've been on the team the whole time. Like, is that Riley Smith and William Karlsson to Jack Eichel and Alex Pietrangelo? Like, is that the path we're headed down here where it's like, thank you for being the guys to do this for us? Like, I just can't think of a lot of situations that are like that. Maybe like the Warriors, they had a couple and then they go Durant in and they buy Durant, or Miami, you go out and buy Chris Bosh and then you buy LeBron.
Yep.
Like that exists. I don't really think there's too much in baseball that way.
I mean, maybe the Astros, the year that they won, they picked up Verlander, they added some other players. But again, they're not Jack Eichel. Verlander is not Jack Eichel at that point. But the other thing is, I mean, I know talent-wise, yeah, he's as skilled as you can compare to a Brady, right? But Eichel's by no means the same type of player or a winner. And I'm not saying he's a loser. I'm just saying he's not a winner like Tom Brady. And I don't think he changes the outlook of the locker room. And I don't think all of a sudden Riley Smith says, thank you, the savior's here. I think they say, now we're just as good as we're a good team, but I thought we were a good team before. But Eichel gives us a better chance to win, and I accept that. But for the most part, I don't think they're going to thank him.
Am I blowing this up in a weird way that like it's a new path that they're trying to go down?
I mean, have we ever seen it in the NHL, or at least over the past 10 years? I don't think so.
I'm just trying to think of any team ever that like, and maybe I'll pull the comments up because I don't have them pulled up. So all the people that have been commenting, you can do it now. But like a team that went to the final, stayed good, but their team has fundamentally changed so much off that final. And I'm not just talking about personnel. I'm talking about completely how you play.
And mentality of the organization. When there was excitement, right? And expectations were there, but it was more or less excitement. And let's give something to our fans.
It's fun.
Right? And again, if I'm a fan, I'm pumped. They just got Jack Eichel. We get to watch Jack Eichel for the next 4 years, right? So, I mean, that's fantastic. So I got to give the fan, they got to be happy in that sense. But realistically, the fans have gone through some heartache over the past 2 years, as opposed to, not the major was a heartache, but not their fault, right? Year one, so much excitement that it's really tough to bottle that up and then send it to year 2 and 3. But they've completely gone away with that excitement, and they've gone with now more of the corporate approach of winning a hockey game. And again, Alex Pietrangelo has a ring, definitely. He's worth that. Other guys have been competitive. A lot of these guys have been in the conference finals, specifically this team. I just worry that, is this a team that has all the elements that can deal with adversity, or are they going to be in same issue last year when they're not winning? They're shooting the hell out of the puck. They're not winning, and guess what? They're making excuses at the end of the series. I just don't think that the fans or the organization should go through that again.
So I kind of want to stick up for the fans a little bit because I think there's this belief that it's like it's become like a spoiled brat fan base, or like you can't even enjoy Jack Eichel because you're losing players. And like, I get it. And pretty much any team is going to be fine with Jack Eichel for Alex Tuck and Riley Smith and Braden McNabb. Like, there's not a lot of people that are going to be that upset about it. And I understand that. And it, in a way, it reminds me of like teams that did win and then having a hard time getting rid of players after they've won. Because like, yeah, it's like I just have this connection to that moment. I don't want any of these guys to go, which is amazing about the football team I cheer for. They brought them all back. It's crazy. Like, they lost literally nothing. It's like unbelievable that I don't have that feeling. Where I think Vegas fans, there's two feelings that are real here. One is I don't like seeing these players that made me fall in love with this team and the sport get sent off, even when it means good players come back. And B, it's not spoiled as much as it is opportune. Like, as a fan base of any sport, in any world, anywhere, like, you understand that there are certain moments in time that your team is going to have a chance, that your team is going to be in the mix to have a chance. Like, okay, we thought when they first got this team, it's not going to happen until year 4, 5, 6. That's going to be that first window. And then we thought it's going to be a long window. You know, we know the McPhee strategy. We know that he can do 10 years in a row in the playoffs. There should be a good window here. It changed instantly after probably the Tampa game, I think, is the one that everybody kind of realized, like, holy shit, this team's for real. That was in December of 2017, where at that moment, every fan of Vegas's mind changed. It's like, okay, we're in the window now. We've got our chance. Let's make sure we get one. And then if you go back over what's happened, first round loss, conference final loss. If things don't finally end up being a Stanley Cup, it's all a big waste. And the story is actually, it becomes like a cautionary tale as opposed to a documentary / book of amazingness. That's why Vegas fans are scared. That's why Vegas fans are apprehensive. And I think they're right to be.
And to tell you the truth, it proves how smart they are. The fact that they are able to compartmentalize all this junk and then realize, if it's a missed opportunity, right? What are they going to think of? They're going to think of, well, they blew it with that first team. That team could have won by year 4 or 5. Yep. And again, they have stars to root for. Trust me, Eichel's jersey will be sold off the rack immediately, right? But by the time that his contract's up and Pietrangelo and Stone are winding down, if they haven't won the cup, this fan base is not going to be happy. And to tell you the truth, and we've seen them unhappy in the past when the team's winning. So, if this team isn't winning, and I'm not saying that the fans are going to go away or anything like that. I just think that you're going to have an angry fan base, and you could connect that. If you don't win by the year 6, you can connect that and say, what happened to year 1? Why did you get rid of those players? In a way, the grass is greener, right?
It's like again, it's the same thing that I was saying before, which is, in one way, they've taken this unbelievable journey to get to where they are right now. Like, the journey of 5 years off the expansion team, having this roster, having a roster that legitimately might have what could be the best line in the entire NHL, what is certainly a Vezina candidate, what is a legitimate Norris candidate. And obviously, I don't think that's going to work out this year because of the situation that they're in and what they're asking him to do. It's going to be awfully difficult for him. And I think Shea having a tough year so far is actually hurting Pietrangelo in that regard.
That is a concern, by the way. And I know we've talked about it over the past, but have we really seen the best of Shea Theodore lately? And I'm talking about maybe the last 16 months or 12.
He's not been good.
And that's
it's since midway through last year, I would say, right?
Yeah,
Like he was real good. I mean, he finished sixth in Norris last year.
I know, I understand, but that's points alone, right?
I know.
And again, I'm not sitting here and blaming it on the acquisition of Pietrangelo, which I know we've all speculated, but I'm worried that Shea has not. Is he not grown? Has he reached his potential? And that, hey, his potential is great. If this is what his potential is, then they did all right because they're paying him a good amount of money for his potential. The only thing is you need more out of Shea Theodore. If you want to win the cup, you need more out of Shea Theodore.
How much do you believe in like connection of players and like this roster brings out the best in players? Like the best in Shea Theodore was brought out when he was playing on the Golden Knights or the original Golden Knights. And now you're never going to get that. Or like, are you going to get everything you thought you were getting out of Eichel and at the same time, everything you thought you were going to get out of Stone and Pacioretty and Carlson and Marchessault and Smith and Pietrangelo and Theodore and Lem? Like that was the thing about that first team. That initial team, like pretty much everybody was having a special season for them, right? Like Haula, Carlson, Marchessault, Smith, even James Neal, David Perron, even Fleury. That was like the best year in Fleury's career that season. Englund, McNabb, Schmidt. Like it went on and on and on. And it's like, was it an unreasonable, fleeting moment that expansion team was able to harness? Or is there something to be said about the correct collection of players brings out the most in every single player? And because what I feel is like every time they make another one of these moves, someone else takes more of a back seat. Every time they've added the Stone and Pacioretty and Stastny, that has meant less importance for the misfit line. As they added Pietrangelo, it's meant less importance for Theodore. Now, as they've added Eichel, what is that going to mean for Stevenson, Waugh, Carlson? You know, how much do you believe in like that? The right collection brings everybody up.
Well, I'm going to say, I mean, here's the most simple answer. Because they were having fun year one. And again, I know it's so tacky and cliche and, you know, kid-like, but we've heard these guys talk about how fun that year was and that run and how they were all really, really tight. I'm not saying we don't know the inside of the locker room like we did year 1 and 2. So we don't know how tight they are. But for the most part, there's so heavy expectations. There's a lot of pressure. And I don't know if every night they're having fun, especially now with a beat up lineup.
When's the last time you've heard the word fun?
Never. Like maybe since, I mean, I hate going back to Gallant. I hate it because at this point, year 5, we shouldn't be talking about their first coach. But I mean, under Pete DeBoer, I don't think these guys have ever really had fun.
I don't think I've heard the word. Like, I don't know how else to say it other than like, we hated that word the first year.
Yeah.
Because it was so like fake, and fake's the wrong word. It was like, it was such a catch-all. Why are you playing so well? Fun. Like, that doesn't really make sense to me. Like, I don't know how to quantify fun's impact on a hockey team. Like, that's really hard to look at. And like, you can go to like Jay Fresh or Dom or Money Puck or like, there's no graph that's like fun, high, hockey acumen, high. Like, there's no, it doesn't exist. But at the same time, like, you're right in that word has disappeared. And I think what it's done is it's changed things that we can kind of quantify, which is like confidence, expectation, I think is certainly one that you can kind of quantify. Like, as expectations go up, a lot of guys fade. And we've seen some fading. That, can you recover fun?
I mean, do you have the right guys in the building to be fun? And again, I know it's funny that you and I are talking about this word because, like you said, we're annoyed of it year one.
Stupid, yeah.
But I mean, do you think Alex Pietrangelo cares if he's having fun to win a game? No, he just knows how to win a game. But then again, the misfit line, maybe they do better without pressure, or maybe they do fun when maybe they do better when they're having a little bit more fun out there. I think the expectation level of this organization has made fun out of reach for these guys because they're not supposed to have fun. They're supposed to win.
So the current team, with all the injuries, with
By the way, people are going to yell at us about that because, we're talking about fun. I know it's simple and it's tacky. It's just, look at it. These guys they were really live individuals. Now they're robotic almost.
I just don't know how to quantify what was different between the first season and now. Because that team was special in a way that I don't think we ever quite understood. And in that regard, I completely understand throwing it in the garbage. That's not replicable. This can't happen again. But then year after year, it's gotten, in my opinion, worse. I honestly, truly do believe the best chance they've ever had to win the Stanley Cup was year 1. The second best chance they had was year 2. The third best chance they had was year 3. The fourth best chance was year 4. And this will be the fifth best chance unless they successfully get $9 million over the cap. That is the wild card. And that is the part that's the only part of this that I actually kind of understand the deal, because that is one of the ways that has proven that can win a Stanley Cup. And that's a way that you're like, man, if we can replicate that, if I can add $9 more million to this team, we're going to do it. And I get why you chase that, but there's a long term to this, and how to quantify what was good about that first team. Why did they get career years out of everybody? How do you do that again? Is that even possible?
I'm not quite sure it's possible under the current regime. I don't think the front office, Pete DeBoer, and I'm even going to go to some of the leaders. I don't think Pietrangelo and Stone, I don't think these guys get motivated by having fun. They're not motivated by, some goofball in the locker room doing something stupid to lighten up the room.
Schmidt, Fleury,
Reeves. Let's go through year 1, all their series. Who had more pressure, the Kings or the Golden Knights?
Kings.
San Jose or the Golden Knights?
San Jose.
Winnipeg. Now Washington's different.
All of a sudden, Vegas had it.
Finally got there.
Yep.
So the pressure was almost off their shoulders at that point, because the pressure was the series prior to that, or 2 prior to that.
Yeah. And here's another thing that kind of I remembered now that we're talking about that. One of the most lively people on the team that's still on the team is Marchessault. I remember how many videos we saw in the playoffs and behind the scenes stuff and in the documentary and all this thing where they'd hand the lineup card to Marchessault and he would be the weird little French guy that's angry for whatever reason, going around being Jonathan Marchessault. Well, this season, the only time I've seen the lineup card handed out ever, since DeBoer actually, the only time I've ever seen it was the game on TNT that I remember I texted you, did DeBoer say anything of note in that pregame speech? You said no. I actually went back and watched it, and he really didn't. It was your normal coach speak. And again, it's 8 games into the season, whatever. I don't expect him to have some crazy message or whatever. But he then handed the lineup card to Alex Pietrangelo, who I don't know this, but I can assume he did not have funny faces and screaming in guys' faces and being Jonathan Marchessault. He wasn't Jonathan Marchessault. It is a much different vibe now. And where that goes and how that blame goes, I don't know. But again, it comes down to this team must win a Stanley Cup. That team they literally beat Dallas, and their thought was, thank God we're not going 0-82. The difference in expectation is so incredibly massive, and so I think weight bearing on the new team, on the current team. It's man, you've got to be better than every other team, even though your talent, while it may look close or better, it's really not. Like, the parity in the NHL, we joke about it all the time, that there's really not parity in the NHL. Ottawa, Detroit, Chicago, Arizona are not. Edmonton, Carolina, Florida, Tampa.
Right.
Like, they're just not. Vegas would be closer to the top end of that group when they're healthy. Now they're closer to the bottom end. But like that the parity of the elite teams is close.
Yeah, for sure. Because you're talking about a group of maybe 5 or 6 that are beefed up, and they can, on any given night, they could probably beat the other team's goaltender, right? Going back to the example you just used about Marchessault, he's claimed up a bit. He's a little bit more, because you brought up he handed it to Pietrangelo. DeBoer handed it to Pietrangelo. That's kind of like a boardroom move, you know? Is it a boardroom or a locker room? And I think when you hear Marchessault say things, it's just not the same personality. It's not the same wild kind of, you have no idea what he's going to say. It's more or less, now it falls into line with what you expect from Pietrangelo and Stone and DeBoer. And again, all this could work, right? And what we're saying is just, you know, whatever, speculation, and we could be wrong, which is fine. We'll admit it. But I worry about it. I really do. And I think you do too, that we're not looking at a team that's comfortable. We're looking at a team that is pressure, and can they live underneath that pressure? I don't think they have in the past 2 years.
I think I look at it, it's like, it's so different. And it's so like, it's such a radical shift in all of what they've done, to where my mind, and I think I speak on behalf of a lot of Golden Knights fans when I say that, is like, I know what the expansion team did. I know what an elite near cup winning team can look like. And then I've watched 3 years since, and each year I feel like it's gotten farther and farther away from that. Now, if it's getting so far away that maybe it gets to, this is a new way that you're going to teach us how to be that team. You know, like, the only thing in all of our minds is like, it's got to look like that. And the only other examples we have are the other teams that have won. And they don't look like Tampa. They don't look like St. Louis. They did kind of in the bubble, but they don't now. They don't look like the Pittsburgh teams or the LAs or the Chicagos or the Bostons before them. You know, definitely not like the Detroits back in the day, because there was no cap then. Right. And, you know, it's different. They don't look like that. So they might be kind of bringing forward a new thing that we're like, oh, you know what, this can work. But the hardest part for anybody to like reconcile with that is, but what about Toronto? Are they different than Toronto? Like, compare them to Toronto. Like, let me pull Toronto's roster up. Like, are they actually different? Is this an actual comparison that we should be making or not making?
I mean, I got to be honest with you. I think Toronto's top line is better than the Golden Knights, even when they're healthy. I mean, right, and I'm just talking statistically, but I mean, Tavares is the best center. I mean, I know Eichel's a great center, but unfortunately, when it comes to winning cups, you'd probably want Tavares there, right?
All right, highest paid players in the team are Matthews, Tavares, Marner, Nylander, Muzzin, Riley, and then their goalie is Campbell, who doesn't make all that much. So, like, at the forward position, they're better than Vegas. Vegas has Pacioretty, Stone, and Eichel, and then behind them, let's just not even go into the depth. That gets a little confusing. But, like, I think if you just say, you get the top 4 forwards, do you want do you want Pacioretty, Eichel, Stone? Who's the 4th? Carlson?
Yeah, or Marchessault, just scoring.
Okay, Carlson or Marchessault. Or do you want Matthews, Tavares, Marner, Nylander?
Now, I mean, people are going to yell at me. I'm taking theirs too. People are going to yell at us because this team has gone further than Toronto, but we're just talking about high-end talent scoring points.
But let me go on. Let me continue. Defensively, they have Muzzin, Riley, Brody. They're all making over $5 million. I'm 100% taking Martinez, Pietrangelo, Theodore over Muzzin, Riley, Brody. Then Campbell or Leonard, and then you can go back and you can say Anderson or Leonard. I think those are fairly comparable. So I guess the difference in a way is like Vegas has one at every level. Vegas has a star at every level where I'm not sure Toronto ever did. And I know that Edmonton never did. Maybe that's the difference in this is like, okay, well, yeah, you have a star center, a star winger, a star defenseman, and a star goalie. Like, while you're calling it top heavy, and it is in regards to the cap, it's balanced in a way that no other team is, or at least no other top heavy team is.
And we've heard it for years now that, all organizations believe to win a cup, you got to win down the middle, right? So you have your star center, now you have your star defenseman and your star goaltender, and you have Carlson as your second line center. And the way that Stevenson's been playing, there's your third. I would wonder if Nolan Patrick's good enough or healthy enough at that point to anchor the fourth line. But at that point, it doesn't really matter who's the center of that line.
Well, Waz an option. Yeah. Jan Mark's an option. There's different options there. I don't think I'm all that worried about that. I do think it's a different type of top heavy. It is one on each level, and like that does lead you to say like, okay, well, that does look different. They do have each piece in place. And again, like I can't get my mind off of like, I think the problem, and I think where Golden Knights fans have such a hard time with this is like our picture of success is misfits. Literally, they called themselves misfits. Like that's our picture of elite hockey.
And
fun.
People are but people are going to tell us we have to get over that, and that we're living in the past. I understand and I accept that to a degree, but we're comparing winning to that season because they did win or they won. They got as close as any other Golden Knight team.
We haven't seen it. We haven't seen it look the same way. Like the way that team lost looked different than the way that the other teams have lost. And really, I think I would take the two losses with not a major and losing to Washington and put it against losing to Dallas and losing to Montreal. Like anybody would say, which are the better losses? Well, they're clearly Washington and getting fucked by the ref. Like clearly those two make you feel better about your team than being unable to beat teams that are not as good as you, or at least should not be as good as you. Like it leads you that path. But now, okay, now you have a different option in Eichel. Maybe your power play should never be that bad again. But is Leonard going to do the things Fleury did at different times? Like that's another one. That was a guy we were confident at any moment in any playoff game. They might get blasted, but this guy will save them. We don't know that about Leonard in playoff series. He's had good games. He's had solid games. He's had bad games in the playoffs. We don't have that moment where he carries someone to a final, carries someone to a cup. But usually, most times, you don't. You didn't have it about Holtby. You didn't have it about Binnington. You didn't have it about Vasilevsky until he did it the first time. Even Corey Crawford was a guy that like everyone was like, this guy can't do it. He won't do it. And then he did. And you're like, oh, fuck. And then he did it again. You're like, oh, my God, this is unbelievable. So in a way, I feel like they are kind of potentially teaching us and fans and us and media and everybody. And I think the world in a way that like you can build a team like this. But we have to see it happen before we're going to truly become believers.
Right. Like, I always, and you too, we always go down the line of only caring about the postseason because we've been told that this team is a winning team. So who cares about their record in the regular season, especially when they're injured? Just make it, right? Just make it. But if it's not to the point where they're winning and those two losses, the first 2 years were heartbreaks. The last two were embarrassing. And that's a big deal. I mean, for fans, because it loses their confidence in the team going forward when they see the same guys on that lineup that lost to Montreal, that lost to Dallas. I know there's been some changes here and there, but I mean, when fans look at the ice and they see the Golden Knights winning 5-2 over Ottawa, they still have to worry that in the postseason they're going to lose 5-2 to Edmonton or whoever else, Seattle, if they make it.
So,
by the way, Seattle is kind of I think they've been looking at what's been going on, and it seems that they're not going to go down that road at all.
Well, they're clearly going down a different path, and whatever. We'll have plenty of time to kind of compare Seattle and Vegas and what happened. I guess that's the next opponent tomorrow, so that'll be interesting. But
by the way, the broadcast, bullshit tomorrow.
What is it?
It's only on ESPN Plus and Hulu. Hulu. It's not on TV whatsoever.
What?
Not on AT&T.
Even locally?
Yep.
It's not an AT&T Sports tomorrow?
Nope. It's just ESPN Plus and Hulu.
Oh.
By the way, so since they became more corporate, I was watching an old cartoon with my son, and this came up, and it reminded me of our local team. Can you see that there?
What is this like? I don't know what this is.
They're like robot hockey players.
Okay, yeah. Is this like Paw Patrol situation?
No, that's actually it's the Mighty Ducks old show from the 90s. Disney
okay,
Plus
and they're like
the
the Monstars situation from
exactly.
India, whatever. What is that movie called? Space Jam.
Space Jam, yes.
Have you seen the new one?
Yeah, I did.
Was it good?
It's not as good as the first one because, listen, I like LeBron, but he can't act as well as Jordan.
So, he's not Michael.
All right, Bill Murray was in the first one too. So
he's spectacular.
And Newman.
Let's dig into kind of how they're playing right now, what some of the issues are, how I guess my read on this team is so off right now. When I feel like they're playing like garbage, they win. When I feel like they're playing okay to well, they lose. And so I'm really confused at what I'm watching and how much to read into it and how many of these underlying problems are going to continue, because we like to just, and I do this every single article, I'm sure you do the same. Like, I literally cannot write the first 50 words of an article without mentioning injuries. I can't do it.
I mean, how can you?
I try. I think today's, I went around it. I think I said whether self-inflicted or not.
Yeah.
Is kind of how I put it. And I don't know how to do it. But at the same time, we're blaming everything on that. And I'll use a real world example, which is COVID. For a while here, anything that happened, it didn't matter. Anything. It's raining. Well, if it wasn't COVID, it wouldn't be raining right now. Like, there's lower attendance, COVID. Like, the stock market's going up, COVID. Supply chain issues, COVID. President, COVID. Like, all of it. We always did, and we're doing that with this team. But I want to dig into some of the issues, namely high danger chances. Against. They're allowing a ridiculous amount of high danger chances against, and they're doing it to shit hockey teams. They're doing it to Detroit, Montreal, okay, Toronto does it to you, fine. But LA had a ridiculous amount. New York had 11 in one period against Vegas. The Islanders.
What about Anaheim at the end of the game? They must have
Anaheim in the third period, Seattle in their very first game. They're missing Zach Whitecloud. That's their only defenseman they're missing. They were missing Martinez for a bit there, but he's been back. I don't think Shea's playing very well defensively. I don't think Haig's playing very well defensively. I think Pietrangelo is having some of his defense kind of let go by the wayside so that he can do more offensively.
Yep.
I don't think you're getting much out of Dylan Coghlan. I was hoping to get more out of him. Offensively, it's not been much there aside from shots from the point that usually don't get through. And defensively, it's a bit of a mess. And McNabb, I think, has been the one stalwart in his own end. And he's playing with what I think is the worst of the six that they have in Coghlan. Does Whitecloud and even go beyond it? Does each individual guy coming back in, does that just change this? Are they suddenly never going to allow high danger chances like they used to?
No, definitely not. Because you just mentioned all these names that were offensive defensemen, and then you named one that was a defensive defenseman in McNabb. So they're obviously, the organization took a different approach defensively, and they brought in a coach that has that type of strategy and has used it before. I think that's what's going on. And maybe, I mean, I can't imagine White Cloud's the reason, right? I respect White Cloud, and I think he's a good player. But, I mean, we could go back. I doubt those San Jose teams had numbers like that against them.
I highly doubt it. I mean, and then they gave up a ton with everyone healthy. Like in the preseason, I wrote about it. I said, like, what is going on? Why are they giving up all these high danger chances? Because that was one of the things, like that was the hallmark of the Golden Knights the last year and a half since DeBoer. And actually, I felt like it was underrated. I remember writing the story about it where it was like the Golden Knights have a top 5 defense under Gallant, and everyone's like, what the fuck? And you looked at the advanced numbers, and it was there. This year, they legitimately have a bottom 5 defense. And so if you compare it to last year, and we all want to do this, like they're 6 wins from winning the Cup. That's where they are. If they just score a few more, if they just get some on the power play. Well, yeah, but that team was number 1 in high danger chances against, number 1 or 2 in shots against. Like they got elite goaltending throughout the entire postseason until Fleury decided to give away a goal. Like they got all of these things. Now they're literally on the bottom. If they get fully healthy and they only rise to 15, now you need 4 goals a game in the playoffs.
Right. And let's be honest, that's tough to do for any team, especially this team. We've seen this team dry up consistently, and we wonder if they can get 3. 4, I just can't see them winning a cup.
Maybe
being
Eichel
expected to win 4. Maybe.
Maybe that changes things. But yeah, like
and maybe Stone helps the high danger chances against. I don't know how much, but he should help a little bit.
They were giving up a bunch when they had Carlson, so I don't think it's him. Like
right.
Maybe that line doesn't give up as many. I don't like as much as, don't get me wrong, I like Jack Eichel. I think he's going to be an awesome player here. I think he's going to be pushing 70 points over 82 games or whatever that happens to be. I don't think he's going to be a defensive stalwart. I don't think he's going to be better. I think he's actually going to be the worst defensive center on the team.
I mean, well, and to tell you the truth, I think they expect that. I mean, they're paying specifically for offense in his skill, which he has tons of it. And it's always the gritty guys that are better defensively, right? So you don't pay those guys a lot of money, except for Mark Stone. I mean, you can't expect Eichel to do that. So that means Carlson's going to have to pick up all that work, right? And then do you rely on Stevenson to pick up more work after Carlson? I don't know if you do or not. But
then aren't you losing the offense from Carlson and the offense from Stevenson? Like that was a part of it. And this is where I'm talking about these incremental changes. Like we get more offense out of Jack Eichel, but isn't that going to cannibalize some of the offense down the road? And then you're putting William Karlsson in a position like he was in Columbus. He's going to be a 5-goal per season player if you play him in a third-line defensive role. That's what he used to be.
And realistically, it's been probably the last 2 years. I mean, you've even said it, where they're one-dimensional now. Right? They're not expected to do what they did year 1 and year 2. They're more or less expected to do what they did against Colorado in the postseason. Yeah, that's valuable. But look what happens against Montreal and Dallas. That line still has to score.
But Colorado in the postseason, they didn't give up chances. When they were playing at their best against Colorado, there were no chances. Colorado would have an impossible time getting in the zone. And then when they got there, there was just no ice. McKinnon never got going. And the danger time for them was like when they got on the power play, they were fairly dangerous. Right. And so seeing them be such a horrendous team allowing high danger chances leads me to ask the question, like, are they going to get back to being elite? Now, there are other pieces that I think, you can say like, okay, the power play. Well, Jack Eichel will probably help your power play. Like, that's not a hard thing to say. Mark Stone, Max Pacioretty, William Karlsson, they will help your power play. Like, that's there. And then there's a huge piece last night that I wrote about today. They look awesome at 6-on-5. When the Golden Knights goalie comes out, they've been elite. They almost scored against New York. That they had a ton of chances against New York. It didn't go in. They did score against Dallas, and they were all over the Red Wings last night with 4 minutes. They played the same guys for 4 minutes, which says something about those players as well. Like, Theodore had a 3-minute and 47-second shift. Pietrangelo had that long of a shift. This is 60 minutes into a game on a back-to-back with travel. Like, there's some real positives to take out of what happened at the very end of that game last night. And that part of it, I'm like, well, fuck. Then you put in Stone, then you put in Karlsson, then you put in Pacioretty, and it's like, okay, they're going to start scoring more. Like, that's the positive part about it. But I'm still concerned, like, the chances against have to stop, because I don't think, like, maybe I'm wrong here, but I don't think you're getting top 3 goals above expected saves by Leonard all season long. And certainly I don't think you're getting that in the playoffs. I think you're getting closer to what a normal goalie should be. I don't think you're getting A++ goaltending out of Leonard the whole year.
And there's 2 things that bother me too when you just brought up all these players, or certain players, only a handful of players play that much minutes at the end. That's telling us that you don't have depth and you don't trust those guys, right? That's obvious.
Injuries should fix that.
Right. But then the other thing is they're wearing down these guys. There's 12 games in. I don't want if Pietrangelo is worn down by game 81, 82, they're in trouble.
Yeah.
And again, I would like to think that Shea Theodore would be able to take over a game like he has in the past. I just don't see it with sort of the unit he's around. I don't see him taking over a game anytime soon, to tell you the truth.
But you can't fix that. Like, you're so banged up. What are you gonna do? You're gonna pull your goalie with 4 minutes left and then run out a line of Kolazar, Amadio, Howden, and like, what do you can't. And then the same thing in a way goes with Leonard. Leonard's been awesome. Leonard's the reason.
But that game was over, right? I know it was 4 minutes left, but they're down 3. They're down 3.
They got 13 shot attempts.
They're down 2 at that point, right? And they have 4 minutes left. I don't know. Part of me thinks that game's over. And why not try out some other players in that situation, or just bring them out for a minute and then bring your other guys back out? I mean, yes, I agree. I mean, you laid it out really well. They are very good on 6-on-5. And to tell you the truth, there's much less effort, right? When you're in 6-on-5, you're not skating much. So I guess your endurance is there.
It's better.
It's sad to think that they have nobody else.
Well, they don't.
I know injuries,
but that's going to get fixed by the injuries. Like,
right.
That's clearly going to get fixed by the injuries. But then there's the Leonard issue. Is like, you paid $2.3 million for the Ren Brassois. You've now played him twice in 12 games. He was spectacular in one. Literally the only reason you won one of the games. And honestly, I think maybe the only reason you lost last night, to be completely honest. Like, I think he's been what a backup should be. Sometimes he's good, sometimes he's bad. Probably most of the time he's going to be okay. They have now a bundle of games in a row with days off in between, without travel. Like, are they going to play Robin Leonard 65, 70 times this season? And is that a formula to win? Does any of the rest of it matter if you do that?
Well, I think it seems that way, especially we're talking about using 5 or 6 guys for 4 minutes. I mean, it's fair to say that DeBoer has guys he trusts. Let's be honest. He did not trust Fleury last year. And the minute I don't think he trusted him ever. And the minute that goal went in Montreal and Fleury blew it, I think DeBoer blames Fleury for that. And I don't think he ever forgave him. And he wanted a guy that sits in net like Leonard, doesn't do the flop around stuff, the fun stuff that we see with Fleury. I think he's going to ride him out there, and then an occasional bring Brossoit in. But I'm thinking last night scared him, and he didn't like what he saw, and so now he's forced to rely on Leonard again.
I mean, we've talked about this time and time again, and I'll give Jesse Granger from The Athletic credit on this because he's done extensive research on it. If you play 55 plus games, you don't win the cup. Like it's literally that simple. And it's been that way for years, like a long time going back. It just doesn't work. Huh?
What was Fleury's peak?
I mean, he played a ton in year 2.
Yeah.
The first year he missed like a whole bundle of time, and that's, with the injuries. And then he was headed towards a shit ton going into year 3, but then they made the move to get Leonard, and that would have taken a lot of time off. I don't know. I could probably pull it up. I bet you his peak was – it's hard because they didn't play 82 games very often.
Last year, yeah.
Like the last 2 years they haven't.
Oh, you're right.
They played, 71 the other year. Let me pull it up here.
I mean, here's another silly question. Does it matter that they don't have 2 elite goaltenders heading into the postseason?
No, but it might in the regular season because they have to get to the playoffs. The highest he played with the Golden Knights was 61 in 21 or 2018-19, and it's arguable I think it's fair to say that's his worst playoffs.
And again, that last 5 minutes of the game in overtime, it's one of the most cringeworthy things you can watch, right? It
was horrible. I mean, he was a huge reason why they gave up all the goals on the power play. He obviously goes for the poke check in overtime that Gaudreau scores. But even before that, they gave up 5 in game 1. He gives up the 1 on the shorthanded shot off of Shea's stick in game 6. To me, it's pretty clear that's the worst he's been. And they've gotten better goaltending every other year when they've gone with some sort of a rotation or whatever. I'm with you that that game has to scare DeBoer because he knows the same thing that we're seeing. He's seeing what I keep calling process versus results. It's very rarely used in the case that I'm using it in, where it's usually the opposite. It's usually a good team and they lose 2 games out of 3. And they're like, well, we played great in all 3. If we do this again, we're going to win 3 of 3 or 2 of 3 moving forward. I'm not that concerned about it. The opposite's happening right now. I think they've played 12 games right now. They've won 6. I believe they've played well 3 times as a whole. If you were to say, yes or no, did they play well? I'm saying Ottawa, Colorado, and Anaheim. And Anaheim is only because they played so well for the first 40 minutes that I can pardon the last 20. They played well in overtime. They got it done in shootout. I'll give you that one. I'll take the Ottawa game if I'm taking process over, process. I'll take the Ottawa game pretty much any other day. Or I'm sorry, the Detroit game, not Ottawa.
Because the Dallas game, even though you said Brossoit played well, they weren't a unit playing.
Horrible. The Dallas game might be the worst one. And they played some shit games. Toronto was shit. LA was shit. They've played some bad games. Now there's been some in the middle, in New York, Edmonton, maybe St. Louis, maybe Seattle, Montreal. You have a good period and a couple bad ones. Okay, there's some in the middle. If you have a fear of Brossoit giving up some of these goals, you're losing more often than not. And some of these games coming up are tough. And then when you start to get healthy, does it just suddenly change? Does the process look so much better that now you can roll out Brossoit every other night?
I would think that they don't. I mean, no matter how well they're playing, I still think he's going to lean on Leonard. I don't think the 55 games matters to DeBoer. In a way, I think this whole organization thinks that they can sort of break ground with a lot of things. So I don't think that 55 games matters to him. And I think that no matter when they're healthy or not, they're going to ride him.
I mean, where are we right now? They've played 12 games, so that means there's 70 games remaining. He has played in 10, so that's 60. and we want him to play in less than 55, so he can only play in 45 more. So that means Brossoit has to play in, 15?
Yeah, I don't.
No, more than that. 25.
I mean, I don't know. Do you see that?
I don't. I think they're going to run the guy into the ground again, and that's concerning. And it's almost, we've talked about this in the past. It's like, well, it would be nice if they had an injury to the goalie for a little while, so they're forced to play some other guys. And you don't want to see that, obviously, but they need to get some time off of Robin Lehner's legs. He's not going to be able to carry this team all the way and then do it in the postseason. And you're going to need it.
And especially when your plan is to get everybody healthy for game one, you want him to be healthy. If let's just say he's worn down, all those guys could be healthy, but nothing would matter if the puck's getting past Lehner consistently.
6 games coming up at home. Opponents are a mixed bag. There's Seattle tomorrow, and then you've got some good teams coming in. Carolina's a good team. I guess it's really only the one. Minnesota, Vancouver, Columbus, they're all okay. Detroit is not very good, but just beat you. So Columbus is a playoff team at the moment. Detroit's right on the outside of the cut line. Vancouver's on the outside of the cut line. It's not the toughest homestand by any stretch. There's no way to say they're playing good teams all of a sudden. This isn't a huge list of superstar teams, but they're probably not getting healthy inside of this homestand. Certainly not. I mean, maybe you get Patrick and maybe you get Stone back, but no Whitecloud, no Carlson, no Pietrangelo. You're not getting that much healthier. If they keep playing the way they've been playing, logically, not the illogical what we've seen from the Golden Knights to this point, logically, keep playing the way that they've played, how many of these games do they win? 3?
Yeah, I would think that closer to a split there because, listen, Carolina's going to score. Columbus is playing some really good hockey right now, right? Detroit, like you just said, they lost last night to Detroit, but they should beat Detroit, right? A younger team. Very talented, but younger goaltender. Thomas Greiss is okay, right?
He was good last night. Yeah.
He was very good, yeah. But for the most part, do you really see them owning Seattle tomorrow?
I don't.
Or, I mean, who's the other team?
Minnesota.
I would like to
see them owning anybody.
If they were healthy, then yes, we're sitting there going, they can go 4-2, 5-1.
Yeah, for sure. But to me, the process tells me 1-5 is a realistic thing because they have only played well 2 out of 12, which tells me they're going to play well 1 out of 6.
But if they can win, shitting the bed, who cares? I mean, if they suck on the ice and they win.
Can you rely on that? Is that reliable? For me, I'm scared. I'm scared of that because I sit here and I keep when I first thought of the Eichel trade, I thought, okay, well, to do it right, you're going to have to give away some salary inside of the deal, which means you're going to hurt the team. But they ended up not doing that. The only guy that came off the roster is Krebs. So now I'm like, okay, well, all of a sudden, if you're going down this path, you better make the playoffs and you better put yourself in a position where you're pretty comfortably in the playoffs so that you can do some things towards the back end of the season. I have visions of winning this Stanley Cup. I can see it right now. I'm nervous about how they're playing. I think a bad stretch at the wrong time, which is now. They haven't had it yet. But if they have a bad stretch at the wrong time and somehow drop, 12 points, if they somehow drop 9 of them, you're going to be staring so far up at that cut line that each individual injury coming back isn't going to save you.
And not to mention, that means they're going to ride Robin to try and catch up.
And does he continue playing A-plus hockey?
I mean, listen, I have all faith, just like I did with Fleury, because I get this a lot when I always say I have faith in Lehner. I do. I had faith in Fleury and I have faith in Lehner. I think they're both very good goaltenders that can win you a cup. I just, when he's your best player beyond maybe Pietrangelo, maybe Martinez, right?
Stevenson.
Stevenson, sure, but like that scares me. If Stevenson's your best forward at the moment, it's a little scary. And again, I'm not taking anything away from him. Marshall's been very good as well. But if Stevenson is a third line center, now we're talking about a guy, if he can continue his 12 points in 12 games, which will be very tough in the third line, but it doesn't matter. Points from him in that line will do this team they'll be a real threat going into the conference finals. The other team's going to say, we have to limit them to 3 goals, not 4.
Yep. And that's where you got to clean up some of the stuff. And that's the crux is like, okay, well, DeBoer's history with the Golden Knights has been very good defensively. They've been really locked up. They never give up odd man rushes. The only way that you really get good chances on them is when they make their own mistake in the offensive zone. And if they could just limit those mistakes, they can beat you on any given night. And there's reason to believe that if they can get back to that, throwing Jack Eichel in the middle of that and the dynamicism, that word, that he can bring, there's reason to believe that this team can win the Stanley Cup right now. But there's also massive red flags about it's so hard to believe that they're just suddenly, with all the guys getting work back in, with a new top line center, with new lines up and down the roster, to think they're going to go from what they are now, which is like 30th to 31st in high danger chances against, to suddenly being first, because 15th won't work.
No, and then the other thing is 15th, you have to play who?
15. Well, no, I'm saying just in high danger chances. Like, even that, if you get to 15th, you're probably winning a lot more games, but you're not finishing first or second in the division. And then 15th means literally 7 or 8 more a game than we're used to them seeing in playoff games. And they allowed too many in playoff games when it came to goals. So like, maybe, I guess my question there will end on this is like, where are you on DeBoer right now? This is a huge moment for DeBoer. They need to find a way, and I don't think they're playing great.
Well, see, that's the thing. If next week we're doing our show and they go 1-5, right? But you're sitting there saying, I thought they played great in all 6. I think DeBoer deserves credit for that.
I would agree.
And frankly, and like our friend Nick, he keeps bringing up, I agree. It's not necessarily, we can't pin this on DeBoer, especially injuries to his top players. But there is something about playing bad and playing poorly with even the not scrubs, but the fill-ins that he has. And some nights, like we've seen, they played really well in losses. If they continue to middle and play well for 65% of those games, I think DeBoer's done his job up until the point where it comes to injuries. I'm more concerned about if this style and this trend of high danger chances happens, what are they going to do when McDavid and Draisaitl are on the ice?
Yep.
And I know people are going to yell that they're top heavy as well, but Connor McDavid doesn't miss often. I mean, Draisaitl has like 31 points, am I wrong, 21 or something like that. So, I mean, high danger chances, these guys are going to score. I mean, so that concerns me. If DeBoer
Colorado, Calgary, and then like, it reminds me a little bit of, and I sent you this video. I opted to not tweet it out, but I'll talk about it a little bit. Bruce Boudreau was on NHL Network, and he was telling a story about how he kind of had a feeling he was going to get fired in Washington. And the season started out, and they won like 3 or 4 in a row. And McPhee came in and said, I don't know how you're doing this, but good job. Keep it up. And then, they won a bunch more, and Ted Leonsis came in and said the same thing. And then they were like team record start to the season, like 10-1 or something. They're like, I don't know how you're doing this, but good job. And then they lost like 3 in a row and they fired him. Like, I feel like the way that I'm viewing the Golden Knights is like, I view it as like, I don't know how you're doing this. Like, I don't have any clue how they have 12 points.
Well, and then DeBoer deserves a little credit there.
I don't know. Like, I don't know. He made a comment that like the hockey gods evened it up in Detroit. And like, I'll give you that. Okay, yeah, I think they evened it up off of the Montreal game. Yep. But like, I'm just thinking of their wins. Dallas, that's a loss. If you play that game 100 times, you probably lose 99.
And they're not a great team.
Like Anaheim, you blew a 3-goal lead at home. Seattle, you blew a 3-goal lead at home. Like these things will catch up to you eventually. And I look at 6 wins, I feel good about like 1. So I just feel like I don't know how you're doing this. And if it's I don't know how you're doing this, it probably will end at some point in you will stop doing this. And that I do kind of blame on DeBoer.
Well, that would scare me. The fact that they're making the wrong mistakes and they don't look good even when they win, and then they don't look good when they lose. I mean, that's scary. And you would think that DeBoer needs to make sure that either, I don't know if it's one of those players meeting, coaches meeting, whatever that bullshit is, right? But right now, as of right now, I'm going to give him credit for where they stand. Last night, like you said, just whatever. You chalk up that loss.
That one doesn't bother me.
And to tell you the truth, I can't blame DeBoer there because Brossoit wasn't great. And we were talking with McKenna last night during the game on a thread, and I said, DeBoer would love to take out Brossoit right now. And Mike said, you can't do that. You want rest for Leonard. And realistically, do you want to put Leonard in for 2 periods when they were down 3-1, right? I think last night you got to just chalk it up. You can't blame DeBoer on that one. But if this next stretch, 6 games, and if they go 1-5 and they don't play well, then it's a concern.
I think even 2-4 they don't play well. I just Gallant. The issues we had with Gallant at different times were like you're falling behind in the first period. Same problem happening now. You're not consistent. We're not getting 60-minute efforts. Haven't gotten much of that all season long. Like,
is that because of depth, though? Is that me?
Yeah. And again, I get the excuses. I understand it. And I'm not standing here saying, like, fire Pete DeBoer tomorrow. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm wondering is, like, is he the cup-winning coach? You know, do I think they should fire him right now? No. Do I think they should fire him at any point probably during the season? No, I really don't. I think even if the wheels completely fall off, I really don't think it's going to be him. I would actually prefer to give him a full off season and a start and be like, look, clean up the problems or else you're probably out of here. Right. I don't think I would ever do that. But I also do wonder, like, if you're unable to get some good games out of a depleted roster, am I to expect you to get 2 straight months of cup-winning hockey when I need it most?
I mean, the odds are against them.
That's
because, frankly, we can go over the last 11 games in the postseason or, combined the conference finals. How many games did they play well in those games? I mean, maybe 3 or 4.
Yeah,
and not all of them were wins. Not all of them were wins.
And that's like one of the things that we haven't seen from DeBoer ever. It's the one thing we haven't had to see is things aren't going right. What adjustments are made? There's never had to be an adjustment. When he first got the job, they won immediately, and then they paused. And then they got to the bubble, and they won immediately, and then they didn't. Last year, never stopped winning. Played shit teams all season long, never stopped winning. Finally needed an adjustment against Montreal or Minnesota, didn't do it. Got lucky that Minnesota played like shit in game 7. Didn't need an adjustment against Colorado because the plan worked the entire way. They've tried the same plan in game 1 and game 2. They lost them both, but the plan was working.
Right.
And they needed a change in plan against Montreal, and it wasn't there. I think they need a change in plan right now. They're allowing too many high-danger chances. They're not creating enough offense. They're not utilizing and getting enough out of players that can be better. Dodonov can be better. Janmark can be better. Theodore can be better. Martinez, Haig. These guys can be better. Your coach needs to coax some of that out of them. And to me, right now, it's not happening.
And again, we said it in the past, but because of that stubbornness to change and adjust, I mean, he was essentially outcoached against Montreal and essentially outcoached against Dallas. And let's be honest, I think when people talk about the, a list of who's a better coach or not, DeBoer's higher on that list than those 2 guys.
Well, and
Travis Green, if you want to say.
His career has been success downhill, success downhill, success downhill. All 3 stops, all of them. Like, I'm not saying that he has no excuse to be going downhill. I'm not asking for them to have 22 points in 12 games. Like, that's not what I'm saying. Right. I'm not even asking for 13 points in 12 games. Like, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm asking for is progression. Get better. Let's see more consistent, better play from the group you have. Let's find combinations that work. Let's put guys in situations that work. Let's see the power play get better, the penalty kill get better. Penalty kill hasn't been that good this year. The power play has been abysmal this year. The 5-on-5 has been lost over and over and over again. Like, are they figured out? I know they're banged up. I know they're hurt. Is he a guy whose system gets figured out?
I mean, I hate saying yes, but I mean, the evidence is there to say, I mean, it's there, right? And the other thing is, I would like to see some of these younger players or depth players turn into something. And unfortunately, they haven't yet.
Nothing.
And like I was saying earlier, in a 6-on-5, 4 minutes left, why not put a guy in there in a situation to try to build off that? I don't think we're seeing that. I think we're seeing such a desperation to win that it's concern of stretching out the minutes or choosing that, deciding to lock down defensively, because they can't outscore a team that has more high danger shots, because they're not going to have the same amount.
And they can only do it when it's an under-talented team. Montreal, Dallas, an under-talented finishing team. Montreal, right. Dallas, who was the other one?
Anaheim.
Ottawa, Anaheim. Like, when you play a team that isn't going to finish and then you get your elite goaltending, you can stay in those games and somehow scratch out wins. But when they've played the good teams, Edmonton, Toronto, New York, loss, bad. Like, when they played the teams, and I showed that stat on the Twitter, their wins are against garbage. Their losses are against great teams. Like, that's what you need to do to tread water. I paint that in a positive way, but you're going to have to be able to beat good teams when you get your players back. And right now, even with players back, there's red flags that say they may not. They need to improve, and I think the improvement needs to start tomorrow.
And I think one of our comments here was Races Fan Rocks 4. He's got a good point where right now that's their only offense, is shooting from the blue line,
yeah,
and hoping that somebody tips it in or it goes off a body or it finds a hole. But I mean, you see Theodore and Pietrangelo walking a line ready to shoot. That's their biggest threat right now, and you can't have that. You just can't have that. Now, again, injuries will force that to happen now, but that's their only offense right now, and it's not going to win them games no matter who they play.
Yeah, I that's all I've got. You got anything else to add?
Not really. Just I'm still pissed off about that. So does that mean that we all have to sign up for ESPN Plus or something like that?
I mean, I guess you can use my login tomorrow if you really need it.
Can you tweet that out?
I don't think I'm going to let everyone use my login, but you can. Okay. Yeah, I don't particularly like that, and I don't know that I'm ready for the anger that's going to come across my Twitter tomorrow, if that's actually the case.
It just kind of proves that the ESPN hype was bullshit, because they talk about ESPN exposing the game to millions and millions of people, but they only put one game on a week, and then all the games they have are on ESPN Plus, and even local people, the locals don't want to watch that on ESPN Plus. They want to watch it on the cable they pay for.
The hype is TNT. That's been the good one.
That's fine with me. TNT, they've done a great job. I mean, listen, when you get Wayne Gretzky as opposed to Mark Messier, the most boring guy in hockey, I mean, he's horrible. I can't watch ESPN because of him. But, I mean, Gretzky and Biz and Anson Carter, those guys really put together a show. And Liam McHugh, he's always, he's a good host. But I don't know. I just think about it, and I sit there and go, what did the NHL really gain from losing all these games on cable TV?
Right. I agree. I think the TNT's been awesome. The ESPN Plus itself is just not as good as the NHL Network. And like, even what I still don't understand is like, I'll turn the PlayStation on and go to the NHL Network, hit the button to watch a game, and it's like, you're not subscribed. I'm like, well, that's because I can't. You don't sell the package anymore. Like, I have to go out and go to the ESPN app, and the ESPN app's not nearly as good. The stats aren't there. It's just not as good. And for hockey, and maybe that improves, I don't know. For those of you that have listened to an hour and 55 minutes of this, please go get your other Sin Bingo card at Legacy Sports Cards. We've had some people pick them up, but we're giving away a whole bunch of prizes, and more people need to go pick up cards. And you just spent 2 hours listening to us, so you owe it to us to drive your butt over there and say, I want my Sin Bingo card. We're trying to give you free shit, so go do it, please. It really is important to us. It matters to us. And it is the reason why we do shows like this, even when we're in situations where we're not even allowed to drive and be in the same place. We still do the show. So because we do this, please go and pick one of those up. It costs you absolutely nothing. It's on Fort Apache and Flamingo. It's not far from anybody. It's right off the highway. I promise you. Go get yourself a Sin Bingo card. It would mean a lot to us. We want to replenish those things multiple times. So please go do that.
I would say make a day of it. There's great Mexican restaurant there. There's a wing restaurant right next door, a pizza place. And then if you have, needs for home, there's a Home Depot right there. So I would say make a day of it.
Make a day of it. There's a FedEx Express across the street. Like, you got everything you need. I'm on.
If you want to donate some stuff, Goodwill's there.
You can't beat it. I think there's like a Nevada bank on the corner.
We just might have uncovered the most important intersection in all of Las Vegas.
There's no doubt the most important intersection in all of Las Vegas is Fort Apache and Flamingo.
Yep.
That's a fact. And that's where you need to go. Legacy Sports Cards. Please go pick up Sin Bingo cards. If you don't have one on email, you can request one on email. We're still sending those out through the entire rest of the month. So you got plenty of time to do that. But definitely go ahead and go pick one of those bad boys up. Give me a prediction. There's 3 games before our next podcast. They're playing Seattle, Minnesota, and Vancouver. Give me some predictions.
I hate saying it, but I think Seattle will get the win tomorrow night. I think they beat Minnesota, surprisingly. And then I think, who's it, Carolina, you said?
No, Vancouver.
I'm going to say they beat Vancouver, too.
I'm with this guy, Jeff Walker, right here. I'm going with this 1-1-1.
He's a smart man.
Overtime against Seattle, lose to Minnesota, beat Vancouver. Or no, I'm going to go backwards. Overtime to Seattle with a loss, beat or lose to Minnesota, and then beat Vancouver. No, backwards. I can't. Fuck. Whatever. I'm out of here. I'm too tired. Good night.
Go to Legacy.
Yes.